The Blast from Our Past Network.
Podcasting After Dark presents TV Obscura, a deep dive into underrated and unknown television shows from our youth. Cartoons, sitcoms, cop shows, and much more. Sit back and enjoy some nostalgic fun with TV Obscura.
Three, two, one.
I love how your eyes are closed, Corey. Like you look like you're gonna catch the sword.
Well, because I found out early on that if I had my eyes open, I would watch Zach. So I just kind of try to mentally do it with him.
I know. I totally get what you're doing.
Yeah,
I'm
but
saying,
it looks silly.
when you don't like, I look at you. I'm like, you look like you're about to try to catch the sword.
No, you know what he's waiting for a star to fall. Dude, I found a new love for that song in season two of Royal Gemstones. They make great use of that song, and it's fantastic.
Wow. Okay,
Never heard of that.
I'll have to check
I mean,
it out.
I've always loved that song. There's never a moment where I didn't love it. So, good times.
Good times. And now back to Podcasting After Dark presents TV Obscura.
Corey, what the hell is that green thing in your room? Well, I just left. It actually shot out the window, and I see some sort of weird ectoplasmic. Oh, I think that's your own.
That's mine.
Never mind.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to this month's episode of Podcasting After Dark presents TV Obscura. I am 1/3 of the TV Obscura team. Corey, a.k.a. Sleazy C, joined with me, as always, are my two brothers from other mothers, Zach, the Total Snackage Schaefer, and A. Diallo, the Armageddon Jackson. What's up, boyos? First off, thank you so much for letting me pick the lineup for this episode. Very much appreciate both of you. As you all heard on the last episode, it's my birthday month. Yay!
They say it's your birthday. Oh, here come the high school choir singers to sing your song. Happy birthday to you, Durain. Get the fuck out of the classroom now. Hated those choral singers. But happy birthday. It's your birthday.
Thank you.
That's okay. Next month, since it's March, we're gonna have a show full of racist Irish tropes. So that's gonna be the it's gonna be the payback, I guess.
That's right. But so I picked this because I picked an all Ghostbusters episode because Real Ghostbusters is my favorite cartoon of all time. I also found a new love for Extreme Ghostbusters within the last 5 or 6 years after watching it on Hulu one time, like the whole season. It's no longer there, I don't believe. And then, as of today, I have a newfound love for the Filmation Ghostbusters that came out, that Zach and Diallo, as long as we've been friends, have championed that show. But to me, it kind of fell on deaf ears. Until tonight, where I kind of watched the original series, the live action show, and kind of coupled it with the cartoon, and I saw things that I really enjoyed, and I'm really looking forward to diving into all of these shows with you guys. But first and foremost, Diallo, how's it going, buddy? How's your month going?
It's going great.
All right.
He's been productive, but it's keeping it secret.
Good. Working in the lab. I know how it goes, buddy. I know how it goes. You keep things close to the heart until it's ready to rock and roll.
Yeah.
And I appreciate that because I've never been a big fan of talkers. I appreciate doers. And if there's one thing that Diallo is, that's a doer. Zach, he's a talker on the other hand, though. No, I'm just kidding.
Wow. That's true. I am.
Just fucking with you, man.
I am a talker. I'm a talker. I'm a walker. I'm a street hide stalker. There's a lot of music coming out of me tonight.
It is.
What the hell's going on?
It's going to be a very musical episode.
A lot of toots.
There is.
How's it going with
talk
you,
like this
buddy?
all night. Oh, it's going great. I'm just going to go.
You're gonna be
And
Tracy.
For those that can speak, for those that can speak ape, I've had a very busy month, and it's been good. It's been good.
We're recording this early and like a couple days early, and I just got finished editing the Phantasm episode yesterday, so I've pretty much listened to Zach for like 6 hours yesterday straight.
I like to talk, guys. You know I like to talk. I like to listen. I'm a listener.
That's right.
I'm a good listener too. I hear you. I hear you.
Before we jump into this, normally, you know, we will all sort of pick the things that are our favorite, but you know, I picked Real Ghostbusters. Zach took Extreme Ghostbusters, and Diallo took Ghostbusters. But if you guys like at the top of this, you don't have to say which one's your favorite, but just give a very quick, like, did you watch all three? Did you only watch one or the other? Just a real quick overview of the 3 Ghostbusters shows. Zach, what are yours?
I've watched all 3. I grew up watching Filmation Ghostbusters and continued to watch it when Bodhi was, 3 and 4 years old. So I got reinvigorated with Filmation Ghostbusters. Watched the original Real Ghostbusters back in the day religiously, and then stopped watching, and then restarted watching it again maybe about 5 years ago. And then Extreme Ghostbusters I hadn't seen really all that much since it came out. And I'm bummed about that because there's a lot to love with that as well. So I kind of equally love all 3. Maybe like Filmation a little bit more just from the nostalgia perspective because I love me some Filmation.
You know, speaking in a language that you two would understand, I think we're all pretty big marks for Filmation over here. Anything they put out.
I think they get a bad rap too. Filmation has put out quality animation at a time when it was a lot harder to do it than it is now.
Who's giving them a bad rap?
There's a lot of chatter. I remember Filmation Ghostbusters used to kind of get shit on in the circles that around people. If it ever got brought up around me, you know, people would be like, "Oh, it's not the original Real Ghostbusters. It's you know, kind of shitting on it without even knowing what to shit on." Mm-hmm. You know what I'm saying? And Filmation puts out like original stuff, even if it's kind of influenced by other properties. You know, that if you go down the list of all the Filmation cartoons that they've done, from Fat Albert to Brave Star, it's all unique. And there's not too many. I think Disney's probably the only production company that has put out as much content as Filmation has. Maybe Warner Brothers, or Hanna-Barbera. Sorry, Hanna-Barbera.
Yeah,
but,
unfortunately, to back up Zach's statement, I've heard the same thing. I don't want to throw anyone in particular under the bus, Adam, but I've...
I was about to say, I feel like I knew who you were.
But I have heard from younger people that I don't think there's as much of an... If you didn't grow up with the Filmation stuff from the 80s, I think there's an underappreciation of that. But I think people from our group who grew up in that era, we love fucking Filmation, and Deke, of course, as well. Hanna-Barbera as well. I think Filmation is fantastic. And when I was younger, I wish I'd given Ghostbusters a bit more of a shot than I did. Because I fell into what you were talking about. Let's be honest. I was one of those people, dude.
It's okay. No, I was just going to kind of edit my last statement as far as their slate of original content. I'd say they're like the Renegade Family animated company. Like they put out family-friendly animation, but they were like a renegade kind of rogue independent company. When the big companies, Hanna-Barbera and Walt Disney, were doing it, and everyone pops boners over them. Rightfully so, I get it. I'm not bashing them at all. But I think Filmation needs to be held in that same regard. I think the younger people don't get it because their attention spans are super short. As Jean-Claude Van Damme said in Bloodsport, you got to have an open mind to this stuff, you know, and just and also step back into the time machine of like early 1980s, late 70s, early 80s. It was totally different back then.
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
I
mean,
yeah.
they didn't grow up with it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like,
No.
yeah. And there's always there's always an element of looking back on what came before you and like looking down on it. I mean, when I was growing up, I used to do that with some of the stuff that my mother always used to watch, like black and white musicals and stuff, and I used to crap on all that stuff all the time. And when I got older, I actually appreciated it more. But you know, you think you're hip and your stuff is better just because it's better and whatever. So it's interesting what you're saying, Zach, because like Ghostbusters, to me, the Filmation cartoon is a little different than all the other content that Filmation came out with, because that one was getting judged against this really popular movie franchise. But we all, like, a lot of the stuff that we grew up with, like all my friends, like we all loved, well, I hated Brave Star, but like Brave Star, and I know you did, like everybody, you know, but I hated it. But they, like, all those, you know, I mean, I love Shazam, and like there's tons of cartoons that they had out that we all watched, and nobody, as far as I know, ever was like, oh, these are lame compared to Hanna-Barbera or whatever, Warner Brothers or Disney. I think that Filmation doesn't get a lot of love now simply because it's like not in existence anymore. Like it didn't. Like, if it still was a player, then we would see their IP still, and there probably would be more reverence for it than there is. So that's my take. And I'm out. See you guys. See you guys next month.
Bye, buddy.
I was gonna say too, Diallo, are you a fan of Black Star?
Oh yeah, Black Star was like I think we talked about it before, like the whole concept with the sword, and they carried that over into Masters of the Universe, and I was disappointed when they didn't keep that part up with the two halves of the sword. But yeah, I love Black Star, and you know, the little Hobbit guys, and you know, the original Avenger looking guy that they had.
Yep.
Yeah.
I would love to do a Black Star and combined with Galtar. Do you guys remember that
and
one?
Brave Star.
And Brave Star.
And Brave Star. Yeah. So I'll take Brave Star. You take Galtar. Diallo takes Black Star. Done.
Well, the problem with that is, I remember I was going to do Galtar, but I had to do Pirates of Darkwater because you can't fucking find Galtar anywhere. Like, not on Daily Motion, not on fucking YouTube,
like
nothing.
I feel like we should put David Irons on the case.
David, I know you're listening, buddy. Get us Galtar. David's like, what? What the fuck is a Galtar?
He owes me. Oh no, actually, he paid me back already. I was supposed to say he owes me because I figured out that one cartoon for him once a while ago that he couldn't remember.
Cash in that debt.
Yeah. But he paid because he helped us with the werewolves. So we're all good.
He very much did.
Yeah.
Galtar is available via DVD and Hanna-Barbera.
Okay, maybe we'll. All right, if it's out there on DVD, maybe we can actually get it then.
Yep, you can get it.
Unfortunately, I just checked in. Extreme Ghostbusters is not out on DVD. That was
that when we get to that at the tail end. Yeah, there's a lot to talk about and not in a good way for Extreme Ghostbusters, in a sad way.
Yeah, and more.
Come on,
yeah,
man.
Yeah. Diallo, real quick, all three of them. Did you watch all three of them in real time? Did you find them later in life?
I never watched. The only one I never watched was Extreme Ghostbusters, and I didn't watch it. I don't even know what year was it.
97.
97.
Oh, it was like it kind of felt like it was a little like mid to late 90s, but yeah, I didn't watch it. Can't really tell you why. I just know it didn't look like it appealed to me. And there's like the early to like mid 90s animation, just wasn't a fan of it. And
I remember you saying that when we've talked about Men in Black and The Tick and whatnot.
Yeah.
You've never been a big fan of that mid to late 90s animation style.
Yeah, and it wasn't until the early 2000s when I think I started getting back into some animation again, and it was because they started to adopt the more anime style. Like when the Masters of the Universe cartoon and some other stuff came out, then it was like everything started to look good to me again, and then I started watching a lot more of it. But yeah, that whole era to me it does not quite appealing. So I never watched it, but the other two, obviously, I I watched them in real time, and I love both of those. The real Ghostbusters better, but I used to watch the Filmation one like every morning or whatever, and loved it. So
okay, well,
can't remember any episodes.
except for the ones we watched today.
Yeah,
well,
but I'll talk about what the elements of it that like appeal to me. So
yeah. So I mean, I was gonna say, I mean, you're kicking us off with Ghostbusters because it's based on the 1975 show that we also sort of watched, so we can have a discussion about that as well. So we're gonna have you kick it off with the Ghostbusters.
Yes. So I'm doing the Ghostbusters, which came out in 1986 by Filmation, obviously. It had 65 episodes. It was really weird. Reading up on it, it said that debuted September. It was on from September to like December, but it had 65 episodes. So I don't know if they just like cranked all of them out or whatnot. Obviously, they were in reruns for forever after that. And it was a sequel to a 1975 live action Ghostbusters that was on CBS. That show only ran for 15 episodes. Apparently, it was the second most popular Filmation show behind Shazam and ISIS. And it could have been renewed, but they decided to put all their money toward Shazam and ISIS, which I'm grateful for because I loved Shazam and ISIS.
Yeah, because
you do.
We've discussed it before on the show. And didn't Lou Scheimer produced the live action show as well as the Filmation animated one?
Yeah, and he did.
Lou Scheimer and Norm Prescott.
Yeah, and he actually did a voice on the live action one too. Or was it the cartoon? Anyway,
he was Lou Scheimer was the voice of Attack Track on He-Man.
Oh, was he? Oh, wow.
He was the voice of a lot of characters.
Yeah.
And then his daughter became a voice actor as well.
Oh, cool.
So
nepotism.
Yeah. In 1984, there is a little not very well known indie film called Ghostbusters. That was by Columbia Pictures, and they were making the film, and I don't think they kind of realized when they initially were making it that another property had the rights to it, so they ended up getting like the name rights from, or at least like leasing the name rights from Filmation for a pretty hefty amount. So that movie came out, and then Filmation offered to do an animated version of the Ghostbusters movie. Columbia turned them down and went with Deke to make that cartoon, which we all know and love. And then Filmation decided, since the movie came out and was really popular, they were going to make an animated cartoon based on their original show. So basically, the live action show had two characters and an ape, right? And I wasn't really aware of this until I watched the pilot episode of the cartoon, but it's basically a sequel. I always just thought it was like a sort of like a reboot or a remake, but it actually stars the two sons of the two characters in the original live action.
And I think I didn't know that either, so I think you and I came to the same realization at the same time.
Yeah.
And I think me watching an episode of the original show before watching the cartoon and then seeing that connection, it helped me engage more with that property.
I remember watching when it first came out as the animated form, I understood that there was a live action show. Back then, we didn't have as easy access to like watch older stuff. I never really saw it on video or anything. And I think I remember seeing like still images of the old show. So I saw the two characters from the old show. So I just assumed that it was just sort of like this updated reboot version of the characters. but then as I started watching it the past couple days, I was like, how did they get this blonde guy from one of the characters in the original show? And then as I'm watching the cartoon, I understood that they were their sons.
Yeah.
And then
that's funny.
everything clicked after that moment.
Yeah.
For me.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, anyways, yeah, it stars the cartoon. Stars Jake Kong Jr. and Eddie Spencer Jr. and they're the sons of the OG GBs. I made that up. And they had a gorilla named Tracy that was in the original that the live action that character carries over to this one. They hang out in their base called Ghost Command, and it's like kind of like in New York City. It obviously, when you look at it, you could tell that they're, no pun intended, aping on the real Ghostbusters firehouse in the city in New York.
Yep.
And it's just to me, it's only noteworthy after watching the live action, because the live action show definitely was not that. It was more like a clubhouse, kind of like Pee-wee's Playhouse kind of look. Yeah, and it was that the original one too was kind of interesting watching it, because it gave me, I don't know if you guys have really watched any of like the Sid Marty Croft shows.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, it gave me more of a vibe of that than it did like a Shazam or something like that.
Yeah, to me that TV show, the live action one, Ghostbusters, it felt like a cartoon, but in live action form.
Yeah.
A lot of visual gags, a lot of gags that you could tell were aimed towards kids, but I thought a couple of them actually landed. I actually thought it was pretty cute and fun. But yeah, it's definitely of its time, that's for sure.
Yeah, that's for sure. Yeah, I laughed. I actually laughed and chuckled a bit, and I don't know if I didn't know if it was because I was surprised that it was funny or if it was actually funny. I couldn't tell. There were definitely like these there were a lot of jokes and skits that had been done a billion times by now, but that was kind of like the way things were back in the day. So
Yeah.
so they had like a main nemesis, and whose name was Prime Evil, and
Prime Evil.
Yeah, he was like, he got zapped. They found him. He got zapped, and they trapped him. And then 100 years in the future, he gets out and he vows to travel back in time to go back and fight them. It's a very complicated plot, and his base is like his base is like in the fifth dimension or something. It was a lot more weird than I remembered. Actually, I didn't remember all of that stuff. I just the main part for me was it's kind of a feature of. God, I think we've talked about this before, like Bionic 6, or we haven't done Voltron or anything like that, but there was like all those cartoons in the 80s always had like the transformation sequence, like Gatchaman, like all that stuff. And I watching this, I was like, oh, this is why I watched it every week, because it was just whenever they had to go on their missions, they would high five, say, let's go Ghostbusters, and then go into this little secret weird acid trippy area where they would change their costumes and jump on couches and do all this stuff, and their uniforms would change, and they get in their special car, and then the car could drive, but then it could fly, and it traveled in time, and it was all over the place. But so that's all I really got for this show. I don't really remember like any story arcs or any episodes that really stuck out to me. It just, I used to kind of watch it, but it was a show that I remember kind of like, I would call it dead watching, where it just was on. It always came on and I would watch it, but it wasn't like I sat down because I was like, I gotta watch this show. It just kind of was like on between stuff, or like, it was late morning and I was waiting for something else to come on after. So, but I did used to watch every day. I probably came on like right before Jim and the Holograms. And so, that's had to watch that.
Fuck so, yeah, dude! Jim and the Holograms rocks, man. I fucking love that cartoon.
That's the show I sat down to watch every. That's
awesome. Zach, what are your thoughts on Ghostbusters?
A lot, because I remember watching this show religiously. The toy line was amazing for this. The toy line for almost all Filmation shows were great. Whether you like Brave Star or not, you have to admit that the toy line for Brave Star was really cool.
I don't have to admit that.
Yes, you do.
I do not. I don't.
Obviously He-Man was their big meal ticket. But Filmation Ghostbusters came out at an interesting time, because 1987, things started changing. Animation wasn't looking like Filmation anymore. It was getting more, we're post G.I. Joe even, right? So it's getting a little bit more anime. They're outsourcing animation overseas, so it's not hand drawn. You're not getting those same, Filmation's known for, and Diallo talked about this when we talked about Flash Gordon way back when, reusing scenes or reusing, motion scenes for characters, and that was kind of outdated, I think. But as a kid, I loved it. I think I liked the nostalgia even when I watched it way back when. That the transformation sequence that the three main characters had was great. They did do that every episode, and it took up Diallo, right? It took up almost like 2 minutes of time.
It was a really long sequence, and I was like, watching it in this episode, I kind of was like, if this had come out today, they wouldn't have shown it over and over again. But
no,
as I was watching this pilot one, I was like, I started. Oh yeah, that's right. He goes on the little bed spring and his clothes disintegrate or whatever, and they turn into his uniform. And that was every episode. Like, they did the whole sequence. Yeah.
Every single time.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so it ate up a lot of time, but that's classic for Filmation. Mm-hmm. Every He-Man episode, they had the full long transformation, so because it ate up a couple minutes of time, which is not, I don't complain about it now, but I think back then as a kid, I was like, okay, come on, let's go. Let's get to the action.
It's so funny because I wanted that every episode. Like,
did you?
Yeah. Like, when I watched Voltron, if he didn't change, we were like,
you were gypped.
we were going to fight. I was fighting somebody.
I think the storylines in the Filmation Ghostbusters, I was so engaged as a kid. I think I still kind of am, because the original, the pilot episode, I'll Be a Son of a Ghostbuster, was written by Tom Tataranowitz, who is a He-Man staple. I think he did both the bulk of his writing for the Masters of the Universe show. I think Tom Sisto is another guy Sito, S-I-T-O. He would pop up a lot on He-Man as well. Those guys wrote really strong episodes of the real Ghostbusters show. They had the same tropes that He-Man had. They had the moral message, kids getting kidnapped, or there was a drug deal or something like that, like stuff that they would do in Fat Albert. I loved all that stuff. It wasn't super violent. I loved the weapons that the main characters had, like the ghost catching weapons that they had. Those were really cool. It's like it blasted them back to Primeval's lair. That's where they basically started over, kind of like a video game. I'll go back really quick to the toys. They had like the full the hangout of the Ghostbuster characters. It was so cool looking. Their buggy, their ghost busting buggy, which I did have back in the day, was so cool. It had like different
super cool. I love
it. Was
that
super
thing.
cool,
Yeah.
and it talked.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's super fantasy based, and I think what you said, Corey, in the opening, the fact that they had this main character like a Skeletor every episode trying to defeat them, and then they would sprinkle in the new ones. You know, they'd have a skeleton character or a werewolf or a witch. They would bring in new characters every now and then, which were, I think, turned into action figures. They had, two female, they had a female good guy and a female bad guy. And they made figures out of those, which was also kind of unheard of at the time. Most like quote unquote boy toys did not have female toys. I think He-Man and this Ghostbuster line were some of the few, so that was refreshing to see. I love this show. I think it still holds up. I think it's nostalgically fun. You can find all the episodes on YouTube, which is great.
Yeah.
I have the DVD box set of Volume 1. They're ridiculously overpriced on eBay. But the original box set has the pilot episode to the Ghostbusters live action series, which, it's so nostalgically fun. The one that I think Diallo or Corey, I forget who sent it to us, but there's great commercials on there.
Yeah.
Like I forgot about the Marathon candy bar. I was like, oh, I love the Marathon candy bar. It made me feel like that was when candy bars marketed like, eat this candy bar. It's good for you.
Yeah.
And I love that in the pilot episode or the opening credits of the live action series, they're showing the cast and they're telling who's playing who, but then they get to Tracy and they go, Tracy, trained by Bob Burns.
Yeah, I noticed that too.
That
I was like,
amazing.
I was like, that's cool. That's neat. Like keep the illusion alive,
Yeah, man. And we need more illusion nowadays. Everything is like pull the veil down. Know the secrets.
It's funny. I literally just watched when I was at the gym on the treadmill. I watched this 30-minute YouTube documentary of Alf, and that was one of Alf's biggest things was that when they were filming that show, they never referred to him as a puppet. They even in rehearsals, you could never refer to Alf as a puppet. It had to be Alf. Like you had to refer to him as him. When they would go on promotions and stuff, or the reason you actually don't see a lot of promotions for Alf outside of the show is because that was the mandate. You never broke kayfabe with Alf. It was always Alf was his own entity.
Alf.
And so that I saw that with Tracy. And I was like trained by Bob Burns, but of course Bob Burns is who's playing him. But they were you could tell they were so proud of that suit. It's actually for 1975 TV. It's actually a pretty good fucking gorilla costume. It has a lot of moving parts to it and stuff. So I can see why I like that they kind of did that.
I like that too. And then obviously when they carry it over into the cartoon, Tracy is more of a, animated character, literally and figuratively. But in the theme song to the Ghostbusters, I know, again, this is forget it. Online people complain, but I love the theme song to the Ghostbusters cartoon, the Filmation Ghostbusters cartoon, to the point where I was playing on my playlist when I was younger. It's super entertaining and it's haunting. It's got a Halloween vibe to it. They never did I was hoping they'd do a Christmas episode. They didn't do, I think, any themed episodes, unfortunately. But yeah, you do yourself a favor and go out and seek it out.
Well, the good news is, like Zach mentioned, I posted, all the links to the shows we're talking about tonight on our Patreon for free, like we always do. But I did include the link to the live action show, and it's the one that has the commercials from 1975. So, guys and gals, watch it if only for the commercials.
I didn't know that the Olympics sponsored a Barbie toy.
Right? Dude, I saw that too. It's like, holy shit.
Barbie was I wrote, Barbie has some dope-ish, man. She had the townhouse.
Yeah, that townhouse, that 3-story townhouse.
3-story townhouse, and the ski slope was that was ridiculous.
Dude, people talk about 80s toys and consumerism stuff. Those 2 play sets that they showed off in 1975 were massive. I have never seen another Barbie set as big as that fucking 3-story townhouse. It has a freaking elevator in it.
Yeah, that was crazy.
I will say that the Filmation house that they made, somebody on eBay is selling the entire lot of the Bone Troller, which is what it's like the main vehicle for the bad guy. All the vehicles, the buggy, which comes with wings, and the base for like $4,000. It's ridiculous.
Jesus, that's insane.
But it is so dope. I mean, like the toys are so cool looking. It's a reminder of way back when, Fisher Price made a Sesame Street playset back in the day. Looked like the. And I love that playset. I miss playsets.
Yeah,
totally forgot
playsets
about
for
that.
toys.
Yeah.
I think I had that when I was a kid, dude. I remember that Sesame Street one.
If you go online and just search Filmation Ghostbuster toys, it's like a treasure trove of just like great stuff. So, anyways, I'm done blabbing about how much I love this.
Yeah.
And Corey, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, like I said, I grew up loving real Ghostbusters. I didn't watch this, and I poo-pooed it without knowing. I was a kid. I was dumb. I wasn't a big fan of it, but, I've watched a couple episodes with Zach and I think Diallo in the past, and it didn't quite click, But, as I get older, I feel more and more nostalgic and everything. And like I said, I think watching that live action show right before it definitely helped because I was like, I don't know if I was just in the mood for it or ready for it, but I was like, this is kind of fun. I'm kind of vibing with the live action show. And then I just went right into the first episode of the cartoon, I'll Be a Son of a Ghostbuster, that is the title. And right away I was like, oh, there's the dads. Oh, the dads were and that's how it's connected. Oh, that's cool. And then, like I said, that kind of engaged me. I was like, that's a neat concept. And then the whole time travel thing is just wild. And it is kind of complicated, but it's for kids. It's layers of fun that they've added to it and mythos and things. And, the things that matter, like the designs of the villains, like fucking Mysteria and Apparitia and Futura, all the female villains and heroes were fucking hot. Really well designed. I enjoyed the hell out of the main characters as well. But I just, and then like, really what really hit me is having an actual antagonist. Like a Skeletor type character that can actually come every episode and do something. You realize that it's quite remarkable that the real Ghostbusters and the 1984 Ghostbusters movie, it's remarkable that they don't have like a proper antagonist, which is really, really weird because, I mean, Diallo, you'll know, screenwriting 101 is your hero is only as good as their antagonist. So it's weird that they made it so long without having a proper one. But having Primeval was really cool. Having sidekicks for Primeval was really cool. I found myself kind of enjoying the ghost designs and the villain, the rogues gallery, maybe a bit more than I enjoyed the Ghostbusters themselves, but I still enjoyed the Ghostbusters. I thought it was fun, and the animation's great. And now that I'm a stoner, whereas when I was a kid I wasn't, the transformation scene is wild, man. I'm just like, bro, fucking roll a fucking doobie and watch that shit, man. It is.
I could watch it for days now.
Yeah, it's really cool, and the animation's beautiful. I like I said, all three of us are marked for Filmation, and that's me included. I do want to really quick call out some of the guests that were on the 15 episodes of that first series. You have Ted Knight played I guess a villain. Jim Backus, who was in Gilligan's Island, was in it.
Mr. Magoo.
Mr. Magoo.
You also have Philip Bruns, who Zach we saw in Return of the Living Dead Part 2. He played the doctor in that one.
Oh yeah. Okay.
Yep. And so it's just like a bunch of just random, celebrities. Bernie Coppell from Love Boat was on it as well. So, they had they were doing things, but they only did things for 15 episodes, unfortunately. So.
Well, and you brought up too the having a strong antagonist in Primeval, and Ghostbusters kind of lacking that. What would you say? Sam Hain was probably the most strongest of all the, or the most well known as kind of being the main villain of Ghostbusters.
Yeah, but I mean, he only showed up, I think, twice. And you know, also memorable was the Boogeyman, that the big-headed one that Egon was scared of as a kid. So there were like some notable episodes of Real Ghostbusters that featured strong villains, but you never really got to latch on to them because they would just be busted by the end of it, you know, by the end of the episode.
Yeah, so I think my personal theory as to why I liked having a major antagonist on a show, i.e. Cobra Commander, Skeletor, is having, when you play with your toys and having the battle mean something versus just going off and on a quest in a random adventure. I think that's what I always found lacking a little bit in D&D, where I like wanted to have a main guy versus, you know, oh, I'm fighting a dragon now. Oh, I'm fighting a ghost now, you know.
And to that point, I only owned the 4 Real Ghostbusters action figures. I never bought any of those random ghosts and stuff. Like, remember the football player that turns into a creature and stuff? I never wanted any of them because I was like,
yeah,
I don't. First off, they weren't even ghosts from the cartoon, and then they weren't even ghosts from the movie. I'll just bust imaginary ghosts with my head, you know, basically, or fight Stay Puft in my head, you know.
Yeah. And Stay Puft, I would have preferred him to be a little bit bigger. It would have been nicer if they spent a little bit more money on making him like at least 5 times the size of the figures.
Well, it was weird because Slimer was like, the Slimer one was just as big as Stay Puft, and I didn't want that because either of them, like both of them, are not in proportion. So I'm like, no, thank you, you know?
I will say that they made a monster line of like Frankenstein, Wolfman.
I remember
the
those.
Wolfman they made was dope.
Yeah.
The Wolfman was really cool.
Yeah, no, those were cool. But you know what? I'll give it to Ghostbusters. It had some awesome toys. Zach was showing them to us, you know, before we started recording. They had some great toys. Also too, though, I think as a kid, I didn't quite understand why they were robotic ghosts. But now as an adult, I look at it and I'm like, it just fucking looks cool, man. Who gives a shit, you know?
It just looks cool. You have to say, you know, the animation back then, it may not have made total sense. Yeah, one of the main ghost-busting characters is Belfry, who's like a pig bat, and it makes no sense whatsoever, but he's kind of cool looking.
Yeah,
and he's
cool.
like basically the Orko slash, you know, Snarf slash, he's the sidekick. He's a little sidekick.
What's the one from She-Ra with the owl?
Oh, Lukey?
No, not
Oh,
Lukey.
there's Cowl.
Cowl,
There's
yeah, Cowl. That kind of reminded me of Cowl for some reason.
Yeah, a little like Cowl, and then the one witch had the broom. I think his just name was Broom.
And Cowl.
Oh, She-Ra, we must go. Hoot hoot. And at the end, Lukey, did you see me today? No, I did. Yeah, I did.
I did because I watched it.
Yeah.
I see your little tail poking out from behind that bush.
Lukey. Yeah, and you know, before anyone goes, oh, you guys only know about G.I. Joe and Cobra. No, we fucking know all the other shows too. I'm just shouting those out because they're the most well known.
Yeah, they know. We've talked about plenty of cartoons here on TV Obscura. But you know, just final thoughts on this one. I loved it. I think people should go and check it out. If they remember it as a kid, I think they should go and give it another visit, because now that there's so much time between the Ghostbusters movie, you can separate it more now. And I think the Ghostbusters can kind of stand on its own legs now and not be as compared to, you know, the 4 guys that it was at the beginning.
Yeah, it basically is just kind of like, it's if you took the same writing prompt and like 2 people took the concept in different directions, but it's at the core it's the same.
Yeah.
Like, they even, you know, use little devices to zap the ghosts and take them to other places.
Yeah.
And it's funny to me how the Filmation Ghostbusters is actually the original, and like the one that we know is actually basically the ripoff.
Yeah.
Like, you know, with, you know, it's funny. It's funny because the original live action was there, then they made the movie, and then they made the cartoon to capitalize off of it. And in both instances, it's kind of like they're the less than, but they actually and it actually debuted like 5 days before the real Ghostbusters debuted also, which is just really funny and interesting kind of thing. But
you know what it reminds me of a little bit, Diallo, is when a wrestler comes out with a gimmick and then another wrestler comes along and takes said gimmick but makes it better.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Because, Hulk Hogan's gimmick is kind of a ripoff of Jesse the Body Ventura.
Yeah, who ripped off superstar Billy Graham.
Yeah. So you're just taking something and you're making it better.
Superstar daddy.
And it doesn't take away from the original. Mm-hmm. Maybe wrestling is the only area where we can appreciate both. But back in the 80s, it's like you either had to like one or the other. You couldn't like both.
Nope. Couldn't like both. It was against the law for us kids.
You had to like GoBots or Transformers, and I liked both.
Yeah, I mean, you missed the mark there.
I'm telling you, GoBots and the Battle of the Rock Lords, if you've never seen that is a fun movie.
Sure.
And scene.
And all right, on to the real Ghostbusters.
Fuck me, right?
Fuck me, right?
Fuck me.
Hey, everybody. Corey here. I just want to let you know that we'll be right back after these short messages.
Imagine being one of the last people on Earth, being trapped alone with something not human. Something always watching. Something always waiting. What would you do? Where would you run? Where would you hide if you were haunted for 7 winters alone?
Podcasting After Dark presents 7 Winters Alone, a dystopian haunted house story by David Irons.
Available now in paperback and ebook.
And now, back to the show. Well, first off, I apologize if we're going to sort of retread some of the backstory, because we did discuss an episode of Real Ghostbusters, Xmas Marks the Spot, for a Christmas episode, not last Christmas, but the previous Christmas. So kind of gave some backstory on it there, but just kind of quickly go through it again. The Real Ghostbusters was an animated spin-off of the 1984 film Ghostbusters. The series ran from September 13th, 1986 through October 5th, 1991, and was produced by Columbia Pictures Television and Deke. It originally aired on CBS and in syndication. The Real was added to the title after a dispute with Filmation and its Ghostbusters property to sort of separate it and everything. The show was retitled later to Slimer and the Real Ghostbusters in the 4th season. They added a 30-minute Slimer sub-show that featured 2 or 3 shorts to the beginning of the Real Ghostbusters and aired them both as a 1-hour time slot. The cast featured Lorenzo Music, then Dave Coulier as Peter Venkman, Arsenio Hall, then Buster Jones as Winston Zeddemore. Ernie Hudson actually auditioned for the role but did not get it. Frank Welker plays Ray Stantz and Slimer. And Maurice LaMarche plays Egon Spangler. He's the only person that was allowed to do an impression. Famously, for all of their auditions, they were told not to do impressions of the actors. But I don't know why he decided to do it, or what was the impetus behind it. But he did it. They liked it, and it kind of it stuck. And it was for a while it was the only one who was doing it, until later when they brought on Dave Coulier to replace Lorenzo Music. Famously, there's that story that Bill Murray made a flippant comment. He didn't, and even to his, even he says he didn't really mean that much by it. But he said, hey, why does everyone else sound like their characters and my guy sounds like Garfield? And then boom, so the story is that's what got Lorenzo Music fired. The reality is it had more to do with the consulting group Q5, this piece of shit consulting group Q5. I mean, we could do a whole episode about what Q5 did to the real Ghostbusters, but basically starting around season 3, ABC hired a consulting firm called Q5 for some reason, make their already massively successful show more successful, but in reality, all it did was actually neuter the show. Basically, they came in and they said, you know what? They made Janine more nurturing. Basically, the biggest overhaul was to Janine. Her glasses were too sharp, so they rounded the glasses' edges. They did some racist stuff where that J. Michael Straczynski criticized them for, where basically Winston, originally they're all part of the group and everything, but Q5 was like, we got to kind of give them roles. So, Peter Venkman's the mouth, and then Ray's the mind, and, or Ray's the hands, and Egon's the brains. And then they're like, Janine's the body. And then Winston is the driver. And even J. Michael Straczynski was like, what the fuck are you talking about?
Wow.
So yeah. And I've said that name twice. He was one of the creators, J. Michael Straczynski, also the creator of Babylon 5, a massive name in sci-fi. Diallo, what was that comic series that he was doing back in the late 90s?
Rising Stars. It was like a version of the Squadron Supreme in Marvel. That's a kind of copy of Justice League. It's amazing. It's really amazing.
And I would love to go back and reread it, because I was collecting it in real time, but it was one of those comics that took a year to come out between issue 3 and 4, so I just stopped collecting it.
Yeah.
But yes, so J. Michael Straczynski is one of the creators of the show, which is, he is a huge writer. But for me personally, I am in love with seasons 1 and 2. I've said it before, I'll say it again because we're talking about it now. Lorenzo Music, the voice of Garfield, but Lorenzo Music's Peter Venkman is my favorite of all Peter Venkmans. That includes Bill Murray. I just love the way that he's portrayed this, it's very sleepy style that he has, to it. But for some reason as a kid, I loved it. Watching older or newer seasons now, I don't hate Dave Coulier as Peter Venkman. And I think he does a good job of doing a Bill Murray. But I have such a love for Lorenzo Music, R.A.P. I had such a love for his Venkman that I just was I have a hard time getting past it. But the episode that I watched, and I think we all watched, season 1, episode 11, Citizen Ghost, is my favorite episode of the real Ghostbusters. Basically, it's weird that it's not the pilot, but it is written by J. Michael Straczynski. He kind of jokingly on the DVD says he wrote it because he was the head writer for the show and everything. And when other writers would come up to him and be like, why is a Slimer, why is a ghost hanging out with him? How did this happen? He got tired of telling people how it happened and was like, let me just write the episode. That's probably kind of embellishing things a little bit, but you get the gist. The whole episode takes place in flashbacks as Peter Venkman is interviewed by a reporter by the name of Cynthia Crawford, and he tells basically what happens immediately after the events of the original movie. They come back to the firehouse with the top blown off, the containment unit destroyed. They're wearing their old costumes covered in ectoplasm from Stay Puft and everything. And they talk about, rebuilding the containment unit, but making it bigger, which explains why it is bigger. Peter Venkman has to burn the clothes because they're contaminated, but he doesn't. But it's luck that their new outfits just came in and you can see him. It's oh cool. And then they discover Slimer, they befriend him, and then these ectoplasmic ghastly doppelgangers of the Ghostbusters appear from their old suits and fight the Ghostbusters. Slimer has to sort of save the day by acting as a distraction, allowing the Ghostbusters to get the upper hand. As a kid, I couldn't believe that this episode addressed issues after the movie. I don't believe I saw it in real time. I doubt I saw it when it, episode 11 when it came out. I probably saw it in syndication a year or so later. And by that point, I was already used to the fact that we were never going to mention the movie. You know what I mean? I also at the same time, I get it. Cartoons, I understood. RoboCop was another way to sort of informs me. Very little connection to the movie and all this kind of stuff. So having an actual connection, I was so blown away by as a kid. I was like, oh my God. And of course, back in the day, We didn't have, DVDs. We didn't have IMDb. We didn't have all this resources. So this episode became like mythological to me. And I didn't get to rewatch it until I bought the DVD set like 10 years ago or something. But that episode just lived rent free in my memory for so long, but I had no way of validating it and whatnot. And then now fast forward and everything, and people do address it, and people do agree that it's an awesome episode. And even to the point where the Cryptozoic Ghostbusters board game that got kickstarted about 6 or 7 years ago, I backed it on Kickstarter, so I got all the extra shit. And one of the extra things that you got were the spectral Ghostbusters. They actually made them, and you can fight them. They have skill sets and all this kind of stuff, and they made them out of glow in the dark plastic and whatnot.
That's awesome.
But yeah, real Ghostbusters. I loved it as a kid. I played with the toys. I mean, shit, guys, you could ask me right now, what do you want to be when you grow up? And I can tell you in all earnestness, I want to be a fucking Ghostbuster when I grow up. And honestly, real Ghostbusters probably has more to do with that than the movie Ghostbusters itself. And I'll finish my tirade by sort of saying the reason I'm not a big fan of Ghostbusters 2 is because I love the real Ghostbusters, and it was a hard pill for me to swallow that they were on the bottom, when Ghostbusters 2 starts, when I just watched multiple seasons, hundreds of episodes, and every week they're on top. You know what I mean? Every week they're the Ghostbusters. So for me, the real Ghostbusters is life. It's still my favorite cartoon of all time. Diallo?
Do, re, Egon.
Egon. Sorry. Damn it.
I agree with you on that. The cartoon was I didn't realize it until I think when we were watching the a couple years ago for the Christmas episode, and I didn't realize how Janine and Egon weren't a thing in the movie. And I was like, oh yeah, a lot of that's my memory from watching the cartoon, and it was much more fleshed out, robust, and it was my association with Ghostbusters was colored a lot by the cartoon. Much more lived in world. And so yeah, going back to Ghostbusters 2, the movie, definitely didn't have that same feel. Like you said, it went step back. The story's not that great either. I mean, it's just it's fine, but it's not the same. Anyway, this episode was really cool. I don't remember it at all. I don't remember ever watching it. My mind actually I was actually shocked, because I was wait a minute, I had to go back, because I was wait, they're wearing their original uniforms, because in my head it's always been that multicolored, and I was kind of I think we talked about it from a design perspective when we talked about Ghostbusters before, how they wanted to make it separate and stuff, but and the in-world explanation was really fun and cool. And so I was oh, okay, so their uniforms, were ectoplasmed or whatever, and then they just happened to have these new uniforms waiting for them when they got back. And that's all the explanation I actually really ever needed, But I just I never knew that or anything. And then, so anyways, I was watching the episode, and I didn't realize at first it was going to be this, the whole thing was going to be a flashback, and we're going to find out about how Slimer joined and everything. So, yeah, it was really cool. I can understand in some ways why it wasn't the very first episode. As I was watching it, I actually was thinking to myself, I've come to love origin episodes that come later. It doesn't start off with the origin. It starts off kind of in the story, and then at some random point in the middle you'll get in a flashback origin episode. Kind of appreciate those now for some reason. So yeah, J. Michael Straczynski is one of my all-time favorite comic book writers, and it's the pedigree that I the association I have with the show, I didn't realize he wrote a lot of those until much later. Then I can kind of see why it was such a good show.
I mean, he even wrote a Cthulhu episode.
Yeah, he's great, man. Like, he had this. I've talked about it before. He had this run on Spider-Man. It's pretty controversial, but like some of the concepts he wrote one of the most original Spider-Man stories in a while. He wasn't just like retreading like old stuff. Made a new villain. He's the one that finally revealed the truth to Aunt May that he is Spider-Man, the way that it happened. Like, he's a great writer. So I really enjoyed the fact that he, was so involved with Ghostbusters. And again, it's why it was such a good show. When you were talking about that, what's it, Q5?
Yeah, the consulting group Q5.
Yeah, so around season 3, was that when like Slimer became like Slimer?
Well, that was season 4 when it became Slimer and the Real Ghostbusters, and that was the changes to Janine started happening in season 3, and they started toning her down, making her less quote unquote abrasive, and making her more nurturing and motherly. And one of those was like, oh, those sharp glasses are going to scare kids. We got to round them. It's like, go fuck yourself. And this is what I have a problem a lot of times with some of the like a lot of the Disney Star Wars stuff. Art should never be made by a committee, like, ever. Like, I just can't stand it. So and then the irony is them bringing in the consulting firm. They had a #1 mega show on their hands. Why did you bring in the consulting firm? Because everything, and now looking back and everyone agrees, everything that Q5 suggested and they did was the wrong choice.
Yeah, it wasn't broke. So
exactly.
Because I do remember, like, I think because it was on syndication, and then I feel like Slimer and the Ghostbusters was like on Saturdays on ABC. And I'm saying all that to say that I remember I didn't like it.
Yeah.
And like, it also felt like the animation was a lot worse. And they did that with Gargoyles also. Where the animation just seemed a lot worse when they put it on Saturday mornings. And so, yeah, I don't know if it was like a money thing, cost cutting. I don't know what it was, but anyway, yeah. The lots of great memories of watching the Real Ghostbusters on in syndication channel TV 44.
Yeah, baby.
Cable 12.
and before you dive in, I just wanted to call out something that I realized too. As a kid, I probably would have wanted them to be all in their normal costumes, but when you watch this episode now and you see them briefly in their original costumes, it's so bland compared to the new ones that they get. And I'm like, no, they made the absolute correct choice in giving them their different colors and everything. And so much so that in that Ghostbusters video game that I'm playing, you can pick all the Real Ghostbusters suits. You can pick all their colors and everything, and they just added cosmetics to make your proton pack and your wand and everything skinned like Real Ghostbusters to actually look like the Real Ghostbusters. And it's like, cool. I'm in fucking nerd heaven.
They were pretty forward thinking when they were making the show. Like, the choices that they made were very deliberate, and the fact that they made Ernie Hudson actually audition is like crazy to me. And he didn't get the job.
And he didn't get it.
That means you have such a distinct vision of what you're gonna do that you're not fitting into what we want to make. That's crazy.
Yeah, I mean, I love Arsenio Hall as Winston. I think he's fantastic. But yeah. Zach, Real Ghostbusters, buddy.
Well, I feel like Real Ghostbusters is my Ghostbusters as far as Ghostbusters is concerned. From a kid perspective, it's so much more appealing than I think the original movie. Simply from watching it through a lens of my son and going, whoa, yeah, there's some things that definitely are not kid friendly in the original Ghostbusters movie. This just took it and made it so much more accessible for a wider audience and added more dynamics with the ghosts and made them more unique and special. I love an origin story too. I remember as a kid going, why isn't this the first episode? I felt the same way with Spiral Zone. I'm like, why is episode 8 the the pilot? But it is what it is. Like nowadays, I prefer to watch this episode first, just like I prefer to watch, Problem with Power as the finale to He-Man and the Masters of the Universe, even though that wasn't the official finale way back when, but technically it is, because if you watch it as the final episode of He-Man, it makes total sense. It's the swan song, just like this could have easily been the original first episode. Making the colors different was great. Makes total sense. I remember when the toy line came out and wanting like all of them to be wearing the same uniforms, and I thought that would have been really cool. But then seeing it in the context of the cartoon, I'm like, okay, this is cool. This makes sense. The voice acting is on point. Stories are great. It is a classic animated series. I think it holds up in spades nowadays, whatever that expression is. Just it's so good. And I had the Sega video game that came out way back when, and I love that Sega video game, which is based on the movie. And I had wished that they had made one based on the cartoon back in the day. I had that board game.
Yeah.
I think I talked about this in the Christmas episode. I had the board game, which is the characters look like they do in the cartoon. So I used those figures because they looked even more accurate than the toy line that came out. Just so badass. The Diamond Select released animated versions of all the Ghostbusters, like big versions, a couple of years ago. I think for me, nostalgically, I was like, oh, I got to get those. And then I saw them and they're like, they're cool. No, I'm talking about the animated.
Oh, yeah. I remember those. Those came out. They were like same sculpt as like these, but they were animated, but they didn't look like those proportions don't look right when you try to make them look like a normal human.
No, they tried to like make them look like a normal human in the animated one, but yeah, Corey's holding up the original, like the remakes of the original toy line, which look really cool.
Yeah, it was Hasbro put out like a repackaging of the original. 100% original. Very hard to tell the difference between the original and everything. But on the first wave of these remakes that came out about 3 years ago, they had the Who You Gonna Call on them. Then they got pulled because Ray Parker Jr. actually owns the rights to Who You Gonna Call. That phrase is not owned by Columbia Pictures or Ghost Corps, who is Ivan Reitman's company and now Jason Reitman's company, and everything is Ghost Corps. So they had to pull these and they reissued them, but they took out that slogan off the top. So yeah, I picked up all 4 of them. But yeah, I would prefer these over the Diamond Select versions of the animated version.
Yeah, because they were a little bit bigger than G.I. Joes. I think they were 4 inches tall. So you couldn't use them with your G.I. Joes, but you could use them with other toys. I remember playing with them nonstop. I wanted the toy fire station. I didn't have that back in the day. Another cool play set. But man, oh man, talk about nostalgically hitting you in all the right spots. And I watched this episode that Corey and Diallo and I, all 3 of us watched. I watched it repeatedly. It's probably my favorite one of the entire series. Yeah, they tapped out with the Slimer episodes, and fortunately you could just rewatch these over and over again, and you don't have to remember those at all.
Yeah, right. Exactly. And side note, yeah, I have those other Ghostbusters up there, but Diallo sent me a pack of the Mego Ghostbusters that look fan-fucking-tastic. But Diallo, I'm in the process. I'm going to reorganize my office this year. That's my goal, and I'm going to find a place to put them because I have literally run out of all space everywhere, to the point where now my G.I. Joe classified figures are going into my wife's plants area and stuff like that. So it's like I have literally run out of space. I need more shelving.
I know. I have the same dilemma now. People keep giving me like Wonder Woman stuff, and I have nowhere to put it. I just need a new place to live, so I have a whole nother room of toys.
I know, dude. We're all becoming ferns. It's our friend Fern, not the plant. But those Mego toys, Diallo, are fucking gorgeous. They are fan-fucking-tastic. So.
Yeah, they caught my eye immediately, and I'm like iffy on them. So like some Migos I think look good and others don't. And I looked at the sculpts of these, and they just look fantastic.
Yeah, cheers, brother. Thank you, man.
I think they did a real Ghostbuster line of those Mego dolls as well.
They did. They came out a few, yes, I remember seeing them. I'm thinking between 10 to 5 years ago. It was a bit of time ago. I like these better. I didn't like the way the real Ghostbusters looked in the Mego form, but I like the way that the realistic versions look in the Mego form.
Yeah.
Yeah, so real Zach, and I know you showed Bodie and everything. So far, has Bodie watched Ghostbusters and Bodie watched real Ghostbusters at one point, I know. Does he have a preference for the two?
When he was younger, he liked the Filmation Ghostbusters more. Now he likes the real Ghostbusters more. And
has he watched Ghostbusters the movie?
He has, and he liked it. He did like it. He's seen part 2. He thought it was, I think he liked that one as well. And then we saw the Afterlife, and I don't think he liked it as much as I liked it.
Yeah.
But but then the one show or the one Ghostbuster entity that he definitely is scared of is the one that I'm going to talk about in just a minute, Extreme Ghostbusters.
Yeah, let's kick into that, man, because I think we have a lot to say about Extreme Ghostbusters.
We do. It mostly good, but some bad as well.
Hey, everybody. Corey here. I just want to let you know that we'll be right back after these short messages. Hey, everyone. Co-host Corey here. I just wanted to take a quick second and say thank you to all of our Patreon supporters. Without you, Podcasting After Dark would not be possible. If you would like to help the show grow, please consider signing up at patreon.com/podcastingafterdark. You can also support the show by purchasing one of our awesome t-shirt designs on our merch store at podcastingafterdark.com, or by picking up a copy of 7 Winters Alone by David Irons on paperback, hardback, or Kindle. Just search for 7 Winters Alone on Amazon or click on the link in the show notes. A free way to help out is to leave us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Those reviews are huge for us and really helps get the show in front of new listeners. Again, thank you all so much for the love and support you've given us over these past few years. It really means the world to us. And now, back to the show.
Extreme Ghostbusters aired for 40 episodes from September to December. It was syndicated, so I think it probably aired 5 days a week.
Yeah.
It was a part of the Bobot Kids Network. If you're like wondering what the hell the Bobot Kids Network is, it was basically these animated shows in blocks. And Extreme Ghostbusters was a part of their Extreme block with Extreme Dinosaurs. And it came before the comedy block with the Mask animated series and Adventures of Sonic the Hedgehog.
Can I cut you off 1 second? I hated the extreme of the late 90s when things were extreme. And because in the most extreme thing that I fucking hated was Extreme G.I. Joe that came out in the late 90s and had these poses that were like locked. Like, you know what I mean? Like weird ass poses and shit. Fucking hated that line.
Most extreme stuff sucked. Extreme Championship Wrestling was really good, ECW. But Bobot was responsible for Captain Simeon and the Space Monkeys, which we've obviously talked about.
And we all enjoyed, actually.
And we did, yeah, but yeah, there was, and Diallo is right, there was like a definite edge or a look to these cartoons. The Men in Black, I would say, is very similar in animation style. Jumanji, I think, was another one that reminds me, not of Extreme Ghostbusters, but more like Men in Black. That look. I'm not a fan either of that particular style of animation. However, I think it can be overlooked with Extreme Ghostbusters when you get down to the storylines and the content. This was supposed to be a legit sequel to the Ghostbusters series, a continuation of the series. You had Egon returning and Janine returning. It takes place in the future, I think, storyline-wise of Ghostbusters, where all the other Ghostbusters have kind of moved on, but Egon still remains at the fire station to look over the containment unit, and Janine is pining over Egon, and he blows her off. This show kind of went through a lot of different transformations before it got to the small screen. Characters were rewritten and redesigned before before it became what it became. So I'll just focus on what it is now. The 4 main Ghostbusters are Garrett, Kylie, Eduardo, and Roland. And Slimer returns, by the way. And Slimer looks a lot more demented in this. He doesn't look as kid-friendly. Everything just makes it looks a little more harsh. Eduardo is kind of like the edgy, tough guy, angsty bad boy. He's played by Reno Romano.
The soul patch.
He's got a little soul patch. Yep. Reno Romano worked as Batman in the Batman series. He was Spider-Man in Spider-Man Unlimited. He's a tremendous voice actor. That alone speaks for itself. Slimer was not voiced by, who's the original Slimer?
Frank Welker.
Yeah, Frank Welker, but Billy West. If you don't know who Billy West is, well, he's from Ren and Stimpy. So that says it all. But Billy West is a very famous voice actor. So yeah, Eduardo's like the kind of angsty bad boy. Kylie is played by Tara Strong. Oh, Tara Strong. Just a moment. I have to take a moment. Tara Strong is a very...
this is getting creepy.
I know. I don't know where this is going.
Yeah.
I'll just go to her Instagram. Tara Strong is, she's a synonymous voice actor. You've seen her everywhere. Very cool, very nice person, and like Powerpuff Girls, Rugrats, Teen Titans Go. She's also the Clock on Loki. Like, she is a amazing voice actor.
She's quite a looker too.
Mm-hmm. She plays Kylie. Kylie's like it's funny.
Guys, Diallo's like, settle down, guys, settle down.
They make fun of Kylie is like the goth chick of the group. They even make a reference to like 9 Inch Nails and in the episode that I had Diallo and Corey watch.
She also is not a screamer, apparently.
Oh,
yeah, we'll get to that
I know.
too.
We're going to talk about that line. Diallo, same, buddy, same.
Because Kylie and Eduardo. We'll get to Ronaldo in a second. Roland. Kylie and Eduardo have a kind of love-ish relationship, which it's more extreme than your typical cartoon back in the day. They would definitely say some edgy things. Case in point, Kylie makes a reference. Eduardo's like, "Don't scream," and she's like, "I'm not a screamer."
Jesus.
Kids cartoon,
I was like,
guys. Kids cartoon.
I know.
Anyways,
talk about extreme and mature.
Roland Jackson, who's kind of he works on the car a lot. He's played by Alfonso Ribeiro.
Yeah.
He's practically the driver.
He's the driver. He's the Winston Zedmore of the group. But then we get to Garrett Miller, played by Jason Marsden, who most people would know from Boy Meets World. Boy Meets World? Yeah, Boy Meets World. He's also a very famous voice actor as well. He's done a ton of cartoons, a lot of Disney stuff, but definitely known for like Step by Step. He was on Full House, and then he moved into Boy Meets World. A lot of TGIF, a lot of Disney stuff. He was also in Robot Jocks.
Wow.
That was his first role when he was 12. Shout out the Robot Jocks.
Was he in
Anyways,
GoBots?
he plays Garrett Miller, who is a paraplegic, and it was one of the first, and maybe the first time you've seen a main character in a cartoon in a wheelchair. His storyline was that he was born that way paraplegic at birth. This is important to note because when they did like a test audience for this show, he was the most popular character on the show. He's kind of a fusion of like Ray. He's like the Ray character, not Ray. He's more of
Peter.
He's
Peter.
Peter.
Yeah,
he's Peter, but he's got a little bit of Ray in him too.
And they won, I think, an award for that representation, because a lot of people will cite, real Extreme Ghostbusters. Two things whenever I hear about real Extreme Ghostbusters is it's a lot better than you think it is. Everyone's always, like, fans are always like, it's actually really good. Go check it out. And the other thing is the Garrett character is handled very well. Him being in a wheelchair is never like something that holds him back. And yeah, there's sometimes where they talk about, they help him down the stairs or something, but they never pity him. It's a very good, I guess, representation as far as people who are paraplegics have said. I don't know, because I'm not.
Yeah, he does. He makes fun of himself. He makes fun of other people. He's like, in the episode that we'll talk about in just a moment, Fear Itself, he makes a reference to like, yeah, it would be tough if you were, debilitated in some way, and kind of pokes fun at stuff like that. It's again a really cool character. Maurice LaMarche reprised his role as Egon, and the theme song to Real Ghostbusters was redone, more edgy, had a rock vibe to it. And this is important to note, that the theme was performed by Jim Cummings. If you don't know who Jim Cummings is, he's the voice of Winnie the Pooh, Tasmanian Devil, Monterey Jack on Chip and Dale's Rescue Rangers. The guy is like a legend voice actor as well. And you hear him singing, and it's very rock and roll. It sounds a little like Scott Stapp from Creed, actually. I ain't afraid of no ghost. Anyways, I love the theme. Actually, out of all of the remakes of that song, the Extreme Ghostbusters theme is probably number 2 next to the original. So I pitched to the guys to watch the episode called Fear Itself. Like I said, there's 40 episodes. The final episodes actually bring back the original Ghostbusters and some of the original voice actors from that series. I know, Dave
Dave Coulier returns as Venkman. I think Frank Welker does Ray Stantz, and Buster Jones does Winston. Yeah,
so seek those out. I think it might be a 2-parter. I know the...
And I was going to say, and not only that, an episode brings back the Grundle, a very famous Real Ghostbusters episode villain had one episode, the Grundle, and he actually comes back in a very freaky episode in this one, in Extreme Ghostbusters.
So yeah, in that said episode, it's revealed that Kylie's friend was killed by the Grundle, I believe.
Yeah, so, in the original series, yeah.
Yeah, so this show is more extreme. It is edgier, and I think that's all good. Fear Itself has a very interesting place in my heart, I guess, or in my memory bank, because I don't want to give too much away. I think out of all 3 shows, this is probably the least seen out of all 3. And this particular episode deals with all of the characters being afraid of something, and the main ghost preying upon the main character's fears. I won't give all of them away. I'll just shout out this one because it connects with me. So Kylie, for example, the episode opens with a Steve Buscemi lookalike, and Mr. Swank, which is hilarious, and that alone should be reason to watch this episode. But and then there's the "I'm not a screamer" line, and the 9 Inch Nails reference, and then Slimer's fear is hilarious.
Yes, I loved. Slimer's fear was great. I loved it.
But then they all have particular fears. But I'll just talk about one. Kylie is the one I'll talk about. She has a fear of maggots. And at one point, actually 2 points in this episode, maggots are dumped upon her. They fall from the sky on her head, and it's really, really gross. It was particularly gross for me because when I was like maybe 7 or 8 years old, I was with my dad, and he would buy houses, refurbish them in downtown Detroit, and like fixer-uppers, and he would enlist my brother and I to help clean them. And this one particular house in downtown Detroit, we were cleaning out, and I was in the kitchen up on a counter, and I slipped and I fell, and I fell through the floor. When I came to, I don't know if I passed out or just was stunned, I was covered in maggots.
Oh.
And ever since then, up until maybe the past 10 years or so, I've had not a fear of maggots, but just like I shudder when I see maggots. You know, it's just super gross to me. So when this episode came out, it was especially terrifying to me. And I think this entire episode is really, really scary. But the reason this show, I think, has staying power with the younger audience is because they always seem to button it up in a kind of a cute way at the end, where at the end, everything's okay. But leading up, like the 2/3 of the episode, most of their episodes were really, really, really creepy. So I think Extreme Ghostbusters is an underlooked gem, underlooked, whatever, and should definitely be revisited. I guess it was free for a while on YouTube. All the episodes were out when Afterlife came out. Maybe it'll get re-released. You can't find it anywhere. I find it on Daily Motion. All the episodes I think are on Daily Motion, but you've got commercials, and it is what it is. But Extreme Ghostbusters is extreme in a good way. Your thoughts, Diallo, what are your thoughts? I know Corey's like, come on, I'm going to talk about it. It's my birthday. Diallo, what are your thoughts about Extreme Ghostbusters?
I mean, yeah, so I didn't watch it back in the day, and I'm not really inclined to like that style. I think that era of animation's not my favorite. Watching this one, I think like you said a little bit earlier, Corey, I did like it more than I thought I would. But maybe if I watched a few more, I would like kind of come around a lot more. But it just has too many of the things that I don't like for me to like get really into it. But I objectively think it's good at the same time. It's just, you know, they fit these 90s character archetypes or stereotypes or something that just kind of like bugs me a little bit. Like, you know, everything was so extreme that everyone was wearing trench coats. In comic books, everyone had long hair. Superman had long hair, and it just like it was too much. Everything was extreme. Like, you know, Image Comics. We were talking about earlier today, a side conversation, like Wildcats, like Jim Lee's Wildcats, like that whole thing, like that whole era just is like not my jam.
Yeah.
So it's I probably have like some baggage around it, but it's still, like I said, it actually was. I was watching it, I was like, oh, this actually is like, it's actually better than I thought it would be, and I really got the impression that if I watched more episodes, I would actually like them, genuinely like them. Like, they were pretty likable, except for the Soul Patch guy. Like, he seemed, he was the one that was the most like, you know, oh, you're the 90s. Your guy in the wheelchair was my favorite. He was the coolest. Yeah. He was the coolest character. So it was interesting that you said that he tested the best, because that was the one that I liked from the start. And the girl,
and he's wearing the original jumpsuit too.
Yeah, that too. And the girl was like, she was another one, like visually she looked more like that trying too hard 90s vibe that I get, but she actually was like a pretty cool character too. And it's funny, the least interesting was Alfonso Ribeiro's character, but he was like, they were casting him sort of as the kind of like the nerd of the group.
The tech, he's like the tech guy. He's yeah.
And you know, as a black person that watches content, I feel like sometimes they do that because they don't want to be like stereotyped, but then they end up making this character like really bland.
Yep.
There's actually a sort of an archetype for that. If you ever watched the original Planet of the Apes, it was sort of like one of the first representations of black men that were like the scientists, and there's sort of like that thing that happens sometimes, and so I felt like he was kind of there, and it was like I didn't really like him the most, but yeah, it was cool.
At this point, is this the only real episode you've seen of Extreme Ghostbusters?
Yeah, it was the only real episode, and also this has nothing to do with Ghostbusters Extreme so much, but I watched it on Crackle.
Yeah.
Yes.
Me
Oh,
too.
Crackle. Yeah, that's what it's available.
Yeah.
And I hate commercials.
Yeah, Crackle sucks.
With
Yeah,
a
Crackle's
passion,
terrible.
With a passion. And I was like, I gotta watch these commercials over and over and over again. I hate internet commercials. Like they're the worst. And so that didn't help me.
I will say, if you watch it on your mobile device, you can skip the commercials.
Oh, you can? Okay.
If you watch it on your phone, which is kind of hard to do, but that's what I did today.
I watched it on my phone because it wouldn't work in my browser, and I'm like, fuck you, Crackle.
I know.
Fuck you straight to hell.
I mean,
it's the worst.
like-
It's the worst streaming service out of all of them.
Yeah.
It doesn't Sony own Crackle?
It's theirs. Fuck.
Yeah. So, but once again, Sony takes a big dump on themselves.
On themselves.
On themselves. Sony can actually, out of all the production companies, Sony's probably the worst because they have all these great properties that they could put out, and then they do, but they do it half-assed or they do it in the stupid way. Like, I think if they should put this out with a new box set. I have the real Ghostbusters box set with the Firehouse. They should have included that in the box set.
Yeah.
But they didn't. And I agree. Roland is a very every character has moments throughout the series where they get the shine. And this was not his. Garrett's fear gets brought up repeatedly throughout the series as well, I believe, from what I remember. And I just want to point out too, they did release a toy line for this show, but they omitted Garrett.
Oh.
And which I think is really, really messed up. There's no definitive reason why they didn't. So the speculation was that would cost too much to manufacture a wheelchair.
The chair with it and everything, because those are extra moving parts.
I literally was gonna say that it's probably cost as not trying to cover for them or anything, but I just can imagine it would be too much.
I would think so too. However, what a missed opportunity to have representation for a more diverse representation in toy line. And, they wanted to, like Corey, you said, they got an award for the fact that they wrote this character in the way they did. But man, they missed the boat on this. And actually, if you think about it, outside of Professor X, there's not many like wheelchair toy figures out there for kids outside of Professor X and like a Barbie type of thing.
Yeah.
Which is really messed up, because they gotta do that. Like they screw up on all the time with not making the female characters. Well, this is also another area that they need to fix as well.
Well, it's funny that you mentioned that because I was just listening to a conversation about the history of the Star Wars radio drama, and George Lucas not sold, but gave the rights so that people could do it for like $1. So people who were blind could actually experience Star Wars and whatnot.
Awesome. And
of course he probably saw, yes, that's going to get more people behind it, but he didn't use it as a money grab. He saw it as more of just a helping out type of thing. And I feel like we don't see anything like that anymore. And they should have just, Hasbro or whatever should have just eaten the fucking cost and so we could have an actual Garrett toy, That's the right thing to do.
Yeah, I agree. So Corey, what are your thoughts?
Probably a lot of similar thoughts with Diallo, especially back in the day. I was not a fan of extreme things. Extreme. Like I said, the G.I. Joe. I hated the Extreme G.I. Joe. I kind of lumped this into that category. Now, I don't have a problem with this art style. I'm probably, of the three of us, I'm the only one that doesn't have a problem with late 90s Men in Black, The Tick. You guys have both mentioned you're not the biggest fan of that art style. And
it's because you're so much younger than us.
Yeah, I know. But Diallo, I get what you're saying. Like, if there's that barrier for something, like you're just not into the art style, I get it. There's just like, because there's plenty of like comic book artists out there that are like, oh, this comic book's so great, but I'm like, I don't like the art style. I'm just not going to get into it. You know, I totally vibe with that. I get that. But I didn't have a problem with this art style. I had more of a problem with the extreme factor. And it was in 97. I had just graduated from high school. I was in community college at the time. I was playing PS1. I mean, it was a different time for me. So I never really watched it. I assumed it was crappy. So I just also never watched it. It wasn't until years later when I became more involved in the Ghostbusters fandom, listening to podcasts and all that kind of stuff. And then Extreme Ghostbusters would pop up, and whoever was talking about it, they would always say the caveat of, it's actually better than you think it is. And so, like I said, probably about 6 years ago or something, it was on Hulu. So I was like, let me burn through it. Let me watch all 40 episodes. And I was blown away by how good I thought it was. I hadn't watched it since, so I've only really watched probably this episode twice. I've only really watched the series once. It's interesting because Kylie is in the IDW comic series that is canonical after Ghostbusters 1, 2, and the video game. It's canonical as like after all of that. And they brought Kylie in because she was such a fan favorite of that cartoon, but she's different. She doesn't look the same. She's more of a nerd, but she's still Kylie Griffin. She's kind of like tough. She's into occult stuff, but she's not as tough as the Kylie Griffin from the cartoon. She's a little bit softer. So essentially there are two versions of her. Diallo, I'll sort of ape what you said, and I thought she looked cool. I thought she was like a very cool design character, probably my favorite looking character of all four of them. I didn't find Roland to be all that interesting. Maybe it was just the episode, but having also watched the series, he also doesn't really stand out to me. And that is a shame, unfortunately. And I know what you mean. Like, it's like they overcompensate and then thus neutering him. You know what I mean? But this episode I thought was really cool. Zach, I am going to fucking ruin the Slimer joke, because when they were all fucking like dealing with their internal fears and everything, I just loved, like, after a while, you sort of forgot Slimer's there, and because they're all separated, and then they cut to him, and he's just doing that, like, high-pitched, girly scream, and you're like, oh my god, what is he scared of? And it's a plate of broccoli. I'm just like, it was hilarious. I was like, that was good. I kind of like how they resolved the ghost thing at the end. That I don't want to give that away, because I thought that was a fun little, difference to it. But, like, I liked I liked their gear. I like that their gear was different. Kylie had this interesting ghost trap. It also seems like she's the only one with the trap, whereas, other people have other things. So it's not like they're all a carbon copy of each other, where, in the movie, a real Ghostbusters, they all have the same thing. They all have the proton pack and they all have a trap. They can all do the same thing. Whereas here, it really did feel like they had to be a team. Like, one person had some, gear. Kylie has the trap. They really have to work together. Thought Eduardo was a piece of shit with his soul patch, but I was also fucking blown away when he was like, just scream if you run into trouble, and fucking Kylie goes, I'm not a screamer, and I was like, oh my god, like that. And
then she screams and he goes, I thought you weren't a screamer, and they
it was so sexual, man. It was so fucking sexual.
Yeah.
I was like,
apparently it is that way throughout the entire series.
Wow. That's wild. But like also in the episode that we saw, like, it's not like they tried to hide stairs. Like, they had Garrett get downstairs. Even Garrett rescued Kylie while going downstairs, like carrying her down the stairs on his wheelchair and everything. I really liked what they did with Garrett. I thought that was really fucking cool.
You don't see that.
No, you never see that. I just wish they put that much effort into Roland. You know, he definitely seemed like the weakest link out of all of them. But yeah, I thought it was fun. If you've never seen it, and you don't have a problem with the late 90s style of animation, then I suggest checking it out, because it really is truly an extension of real Ghostbusters. It is a true sequel to the real Ghostbusters, and I think that it does a lot of things right. I think it does more things right than not, is my takeaway.
Take it,
baby, take it. But Diallo, if the episodes were not on Crackle and they were like totally just like fully free and everything on YouTube, do you think you would, without ads and everything, do you think you would dive into it, or is it just one of those things you don't have the time for now?
Yeah, I mean, I don't really have the time. It wasn't the kind of thing that I was intrigued enough to like say I would want to watch more. And there are animated shows that I like that I haven't gotten to. So
yeah,
I definitely I like Camp Cretaceous, Jurassic Park. I think that is an amazing show, but I'm so far behind. So it's like I wouldn't necessarily run to finish the show, but at the same time, if I were in some kind of situation where I had to watch more, I wouldn't be opposed to it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
the payoff in Camp Cretaceous is totally worth it, by the way. If you can make it through to the end, it's totally worth it.
It's just I got sidetracked a long time ago, and I need to get back to it, because that cartoon, whatever animated show is just it was intense. I was like, it's
intense.
Is this a kid show?
Right.
Yeah.
It's pretty terrifying, actually.
Yeah.
And a connection with that is I just finished Bodhi and I just finished watching Adventure Time. We finished season 10, and one of the voice actors from Camp Cretaceous, the guy who takes care of Lumpy, he's in Adventure Time in the last episode, his voice. But man, that's another series. I cried at the end of Adventure Time. It was amazing. Wow. Amazing.
Jenna Ortega is in Camp. She's one of the voices, I think, for Camp Cretaceous. That Wednesday from
yeah. I think she was also in that.
Look at this 5-head.
Oh, there's that is a 5-head right there.
Jeez.
That is 100% a fucking 5-head.
You know what? So she's a reporter, right?
That'll give you nightmares.
She
it's
was
a horrible
also
sculpt.
So in that the real Ghostbusters episode, that character looks like her. She's a reporter too, right?
Yeah,
you're
right.
I'm not gonna lie. So for those people that are like, what the hell are they talking about? I have a collection of the Filmation Ghostbuster figures, but they're like the little PVC, just rubber figures that don't move. And it's like, I think I have 12 of them down to the female characters, and I have the reporter, and she has just the sculpt is terrible.
It's terrible. It's a nightmare.
Yeah, it's a nightmare. It's a nightmare. And so I just showed Corey and Dial. They're like, what the hell are we looking at? Because she has an enormous, it's like the cone head with a wig on it, basically.
It's like a cone head with the wig on top of the cone part,
Yeah, and what Diallo's referencing is interesting because she's a prominent character in the Filmation series, and then in that episode of Real Ghostbusters that we watched, the reporter has a very similar likeness. They're both redheads. They're both kind of, strongly written characters. So, yeah, I don't know. What imitation is the sincerest form of flattery.
There you go.
Yet again with the Ghostbusters.
So Bodhi has not seen Extreme yet, right?
No, he did. In fact, he's watched it with me, and he asked me to turn it off because it's scary. Just the music is scary, the sound effects, the eeriness of it. This cartoon is, I think, geared towards a more mature audience.
Yeah.
I'd say 10 years old. And I it came out in 97. I was 21. I was watching, I think I definitely was watching it, not consistently, come home from work or whatever and it'd be on.
Yeah. Yeah, you come home from work. I was working at fucking Funko Land at the time.
Oh my god.
God.
I was at a mechanic. I was a mechanic at the time, I think.
Jesus Christ.
21? No. Or I was working with autistic kids. I don't know.
That's better. That's much better.
Yeah, I don't know. I have to go back. But anyways, yeah. I'm glad we watched all 3.
Yeah, me too.
For your birthday. I think, Filmation, in my opinion, I know maybe we're starting to wrap up. Filmation, in my opinion, has all the feels, nostalgic vibes. I just love maybe it's because I met those guys, and both of you have met those guys that worked with Filmation, and it was so painstakingly hard for these animators to do what they did. How many frames per second? That's how many film cells that they're drawing. It's insane what they had to do. So I have the utmost respect for those dudes, and maybe that's why I like it and appreciate it more. Real Ghostbusters is just like classic, and then Extreme Ghostbusters is like a pleasant surprise, in my opinion.
It's
clearly
like everyone
opinion.
Like everyone says, it's better than you think it is. Diallo, final thoughts on all 3?
Yeah, I loved the Real Ghostbusters. It's probably my favorite of the 3. And then it's sort of like this nostalgia for watching the Filmation Ghostbusters, even though it was, like I said, it was this kind of rote experience I have watching it where it was on. I basically watched it for the transformation scenes and the theme music at the beginning and the end, and I don't remember anything about the show other than that. And then in Extreme, like I said, like I'm just prejudiced against like that whole era of cartoons. I think I was really especially at that time, I was getting like anime was becoming more easy to watch. I think I was just that's the direction I was going in at the time, and I wasn't watching as much of American stuff, so it's hard for me to really get into it. The vibe is a little more aggressive than I want, and but, I agree with that. But at the same time, it's actually, if anyone out there watches it, you will not be disappointed. I'll say that.
Yeah, that vibe, I'm with you there, man. Sometimes, like, Eduardo, like, he's too aggressive. Mm-hmm. Like, I did get sometimes I was, like, longing for the more quaint times where, Ray may pick at Peter, but they're not gonna, like, they're not that aggressive to each other. You know what I mean? This was, I think, trying to be more, quote unquote, realistic, and it probably is more realistic as far as like how kids, and they're also supposed to be like high schoolers and college or early college kids, type of thing. So they are supposed to be young, but there is a level of aggression there that I could feel it. You know what I mean? Like it felt sharper, like the animation, like style itself, like the rounded corners became more sharp, but also the vibe became more sharp.
Yeah, it feels a little bit like they were trying too hard in that era, and it really kind of feels like it's like a bunch of middle-aged guys like, oh, we gotta be edgy, we've got to write edgy for these kids, and so they actually aren't edgy likely, and so they're just kind of synthesizing what they think it is, and they just went way overboard. These are what those crazy Gen Xers are like now, That's what, I'm afraid of no ghost. Yeah.
They're all drinking fucking Red Bulls and shit.
Yeah. So, but I mean, it's funny because like again, I don't have a lot of great things to say about it. But at the same time, like if you actually watch it, you'll be like, oh yeah, it's actually pretty decent. Yeah.
That one character, you have to admit, that monster that Kylie encounters is really gross. In a good way. In a good way.
Yeah. She's not a screamer. So.
God, my ears perked. I was like, "What the?"
Fuck? I could not believe that. Like, my brain was going through all these. Like, I'm processing it. I was like, wait.
It was wild. You and I had the same experience with it. Oh man! Thank you guys for doing this one with me. I loved watching all three of them. I love having an excuse, to revisit Real Ghostbusters. I love having an excuse to go and watch Ghostbusters and Extreme Ghostbusters. And I already knew that I liked Extreme Ghostbusters after that one viewing, but this one with Ghostbusters, Filmation's Ghostbusters, this was a big turning point for me. I've never enjoyed that show, but I and I don't think like having to watch the live action show before it is necessary. It was just a Corey thing. It really sort of helped me get into it and sort of like understand it, because all the concepts, there's so many things coming at you. There's alternate dimensions, there's time travel, there's future, there's past. It's wild. There's robot ghosts. Like there's like so many things that you have to like sort of digest immediately and like kind of accept. But like I'm watching it now and I'm like, well, that's fun though. It's all fun. Like I talk about it so much on our show, whether it's Podcasting After Dark or TV Obscura. But when I was a kid, I wanted everything to be realistic and just exactly like the movie and no humor. And now I get older and I want things to be zany and fun. Yeah. Just fucking make something fun. And I gotta give it to Ghostbusters, the Filmation Ghostbusters. They made a fun cartoon. They aired on the side of fun over realism, and I gotta give them props for that. Real Ghostbusters is always... Yeah, Primeval is fucking awesome. Primeval is... and he's designed great, too. He looks fantastic.
It's Alan Oppenheimer at his best.
At his best? But
Yeah.
his best
Really?
But
it's Alan Oppenheimer, and he's really fun.
There you go. But Real Ghostbusters always has my heart. It's always going to be my favorite. And Extreme Ghostbusters, I think, is worth checking out, and I think it's a nice extension of the Real Ghostbusters.
Why are you not one of those Ghostbusters that goes around to like hospitals and shit and does... you should be doing that.
Yeah.
Because I don't have the money to make one of those fucking proton packs. And by the way, if I was gonna do it, it would be a Real Ghostbusters proton pack, which you actually see now at cons. People actually have the Real Ghostbusters packs now at cons and stuff.
Those guys are cool. The community that goes around and cosplays Ghostbuster characters. It's really neat what they do with kids and going to hospitals and schools and reading to kids. I think it's a really cool little community.
I do too. I think the Ghost Heads community is fan-fucking-tastic, and I'm so glad that I got to go to that Ghostbusters thing at Sony, Sony Studios, that one and only thing they had years ago. That was fan-fucking-tastic. I saw Maurice LaMarche there and Dave Coulier and everything, and it was and Myra got her book signed by Harold Ramis's daughter. I'm blanking on her name. But she got to meet her, and she was Violet Ramis, and she was super sweet, and it was a great experience. I think the whole Ghostbusters community is just fantastic. So, and guys and gals, there are so many podcasts out there that will dive deeper into all three of these properties, so there is a wealth of information out there. If you want to dive, further into what the fuck Q5 did to the Real Ghostbusters, there are, tomes of websites out there that you can go and dive into. So check all that out. But you know what? While you're out there floating around on the Twitter sphere, why don't you check out something Diallo's doing too? What you got going on these days? Can you talk about anything at the moment, my friend?
I guess one thing I can talk about is I have a brand new podcast.
Aside from TV Obscura, it's the podcast you were always meant to do, right?
Yeah. So it's called Galactica Actually. It's a play on Galactica Actual, and it's about
nerd.
Yeah, totally. It's about Battlestar Galactica, the remake show, the reimagined show from 2003 on. It debuted 20 years ago, which my brain's exploding around that.
Fuck.
Amazing.
Are you fucking kidding me?
Yeah.
Dude. So Diallo got me into Battlestar Galactica, and when you and I watched it, when you got me into it, I think it had it had just wrapped up or it just
Yeah,
finished,
it had just it went off the air in 2009. So, and we probably watched it around 2010
Jesus
or
fucking
11,
Christ,
like
dude.
right around there. Yeah.
Like
There's a
lifetimes
Portlandia-
ago.
There's a Portlandia episode where they binge watch Battlestar Galactica and they're like stuck in their home for 2 days or something like that.
That's
They're like, we
awesome.
can't leave. We can't leave. It's
Yeah.
hilarious.
I mean, it's a great show. Yeah, so the miniseries debuted in 2003, and I just I hadn't really realized that. I kind of can't get over it. But anyway, I'm doing that. My co-host Jamie Smith, we have covered we did cover the miniseries and episode titled 33, and then next episode will be Water. So we're just doing an episode a week, and we'll just keep cruising on through till we get to the end.
Keep on dancing all through the night.
The Silver Platters. Yeah.
Is 33 the episode where they would be attacked every 33 minutes?
Yeah, every 33 minutes the Cylons show up and attack, and then they have to jump away, and it's
So good.
yeah,
so
it's
good.
actually for the longest time, I haven't looked recently, but it was listed as one of the best episodes of television ever. And yeah, it's been fun just kind of watching it. We're kind of doing it for fun. It's been getting a really good lots of people are responding to it, and really want to, I guess, build a community around it. So a lot of people haven't talked about Battlestar Galactica in a while. It's been off, so people are coming back and remembering how great the show was, and Jamie and I will sit and talk about it, and that's what I can talk about right now.
It's the first thing that pops up when you type it into iTunes and Spotify. I'm just gonna say that right
Yeah,
there.
yeah, it is. It is.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then I have I'm constantly working on stuff, but have some big stuff I'm doing like a couple days, and stuff's happening, and I don't want to debut it until it's ready,
Yeah. No, I respect that, dude. Like I said, I always respect people that do it and don't talk about it, So
Yeah.
that's but guys and gals, I'll put a link in the show notes to Galactica actually, and I highly recommend checking it out. And and you plan on going through the whole thing, right? Like a proper after show, essentially.
Yeah, we're like every week we're just
Nice.
gonna go episode by episode, and it's just thinking about it, all right? Because I've had the soundtrack I listened to a billion times, and thinking about music from episodes that we haven't gotten to yet, and I just get all giddy, and I'm like, oh man, I can't wait till we get there, because the show is just such a journey. It's literal journey, but from start to finish, and just knowing all the places and the ways it moves and the things it does, I just can't wait to get to later. But we're we're only at episode 3 next week, so yeah,
A lot of good stuff ahead.
Yeah.
Zach, what you got going on, buddy? It's about halfway through February, and I know you dropped your Pretty Woman and Roxette episode on $2 late fee.
Yeah, we are officially into season 4 of $2 late fee, and I'm not going to talk about March yet because Martial Art Madness is going to be wild, but stay tuned for that. Yeah, Pretty Woman, Roxette, not your typical, I think people are like, what? Why are you doing that movie? And why are you picking that song? Well, you have to listen to the episode to find out. It's not your typical episode. It's a great episode. I'm going to toot my own horn for a second, toot and just say the discussion is hilarious. And it's the pre-episode to our interview with Laura San Giacomo.
It's where the water flows. Oh, that's one of my favorite songs. I do that karaoke all the time.
You'll have to listen to the episode. It's controversial because, on $2, we always talk about one song from the soundtrack. Uh-huh. And I came in hot with, we got to talk about King of Wishful Thinking.
Which is a great song, too.
Well, I appreciate you saying that. And Dustin and I have a very healthy debate on whether King of Wishful Thinking is a good song or not. I love that song. But anyways, yeah, this is the pre-episode to our interview with Laura San Giacomo. She doesn't do a lot of interviews, and she came on and talked very candidly about The Stand, Quigley Down Under. Man, she's got some shit to talk about with Quigley Down Under, and it's not all good. And partway through the interview, she's like talking about Quigley. She goes, I mean, you could probably cut this if you want, because I just don't want anybody to be hurt by what I'm about to say. But we didn't cut it.
Yeah, so he didn't cut it.
So we are hot. We're back to our normal 2 episode a month rotation, but then we go into March with 1 episode a week for the whole month. So fired up. It's going to be good stuff.
You tell Dustin, Go West came up in the 80s, but they found themselves in the 90s.
I agree.
Yeah, so
Dustin
That's a
has
great
a very
song. That's a great
he
song.
has a very strong opinion about King of Wishful Thinking. I love that song, and I'll leave it at that.
I do too, but I also love Roxette.
Yeah.
I remember as a kid, I bought that cassette, I'm guessing, at the time. I bought very little music as a kid. I wasn't a music kid, but I loved Roxette so much, and I had a big crush on her too.
Rest in peace.
R.I.P.
Yeah,
Yeah.
R.I.P., yeah. That's a
but
great
yeah, I was.
video also.
Oh my god, just
Well,
loved it. Loved Roxette.
I will say the whole soundtrack to Pretty Woman is
It's a
really
great
really good.
soundtrack, yeah.
And spoiler, I never saw Pretty Woman up until maybe about a month or two ago when I watched it for the first time. I only
God
watched
damn.
clips of it. And I think that's very common with a lot of dudes, where if you're like, what's the point of watching a romantic comedy if you're, the soundtrack is really, really solid. And you're reminded how good Natalie Cole is.
Yeah.
Anyways, great Red Hot Chili Peppers are on that soundtrack. Great, solid soundtrack. So, yeah. Anyways, that's what we're up to. I'm done with my ramble rant.
All right.
King of Wishful Thinking.
I love that movie, man. I watched that movie as a kid and I enjoyed it. I've
What's-
always
Did
liked
you?
Pretty Woman. Yeah,
What
I
song
always liked
does-
Pretty Woman. Weird.
What song does Natalie Cole sing on there?
Wow, women do, and it won't forget
I'm
it.
gonna have to, as soon as we
Dude,
sign off, I'm running
Yeah.
to the
Well-
soundtrack.
But of course, Corey loves it because Jason Alexander at the same time was dropping Seinfeld. And fun fact, did you know on Seinfeld, Corey? You know this about Seinfeld and Pretty Woman connection, right?
Like what? What do you mean?
Seinfeld had a VHS copy of Pretty Woman in his
Oh,
apartment.
yeah. Yeah, of course. And he was such a sleazy piece of shit in that movie too.
Oh, he's so good.
Yeah, it's great. It's
Anyways,
perfect. Yeah. But yeah. Oh, that's awesome. So go check out that. Go check out Tudor Leafy. Go check out Galactica, actually. And by the time you listen to this, we will have dropped our Carpenter Factor episode of this month. And we are talking about They Live. And that's a deep conversation we get into on that one. It gets a little political and whatnot, which we don't really do, but I think that episode is kind of warranted and everything. And it's all organic.
Do you get woke? You do.
are you guys woke?
We
I
got
like
woke.
Chris Stapleton.
We
Chris
woke up.
Stapleton, but I don't like that woke crap. I'm joking, by the way.
I know. If someone ever says to me they don't like woke crap, I'm just like, so you're an asshole then. So you're just an asshole. Okay. Got
Yeah,
it.
I love how Howard Stern says it. He's like, woke is purely about caring about other people's feelings. So if that's what woke, I believe that's what woke is. I care about other people's feelings.
Yeah.
So fuck
Yeah.
it, I'm woke.
Yeah, if you say you're against woke, that means you're a piece of shit in my book.
Pretty much.
Robert Davi. So, so go check out the They Live episode on the Carpenter Factor on Patreon. Zach and I are having a fun time over there. But it also means that we have to record Memoirs of an Invisible Man next. So we might have hit a point where it dips for a little bit, but we will power through for the rest of the year because we still have Ghosts of Mars ahead of us. We still have Escape from LA ahead of us, but We also have In the Mouth of Madness ahead of us, which I've heard nothing but good things, and I'm very excited.
Village of the Damned, Village of the Damned.
Village of the Damned. So we have some good stuff. Ghosts of Mars, not so good.
But, the Ward.
And that's where, it'll end with the Ward. So so go check out the Carpenter Factor on Patreon. We appreciate all the love and support you guys give us, and we appreciate all the love and support that you guys give $2 late fee and Diallo's projects as well. So and obviously we say it all the time. Times are tough. We get it. If you can't support us or the other shows on Patreon, a free way to help out us, to help out $2 late fee, help out Galactica Actually, any podcast you listen to, go leave a 5-star review on either Spotify or Apple Podcasts. If you're liking what they're doing and you can't support them on Patreon, leave a 5-star review. They really do help. Don't think it's not noticed. You know what I mean? It's very important to get those 5-star reviews. So
it's important.
It is. And thank you all so much for everyone who's left us, 5-star reviews and everything. So we'll see you guys next month. We'll probably get back to a live action show. I actually have a note going on here of all the ones we've discussed, just organically via episodes and stuff like that. So, and pairings and whatnot. So I'll shoot it to the guys. But next month will be a live action show. So those are always fun and love doing them. And as always,
catch you on the obscure side. So say we all.
Be sure to subscribe to Podcasting After Dark and give us a 5-star rating on iTunes. Support Podcasting After Dark on Patreon. Follow us on Instagram and Facebook at Podcasting After Dark. And visit us next time for another installment of Podcasting After Dark with Corey Stevenson and Zach Schaefer.
Have you been wondering where's the beef? Well, on our podcast, Throwback Trivia Takedown, you might just find that out, as well as some other things about the 70s, 80s, and 90s.
We're a nostalgic-based trivia show that pits two challengers head-to-head in a duel of the decades, with categories ranging from movies, TV, and music, to slang, food, and fashion. You're sure to get the best in retro-themed trivia.
So strap on your jelly shoes, grab a Surge, and walk like an Egyptian to your favorite podcast app and check out Throwback Trivia Takedown.
I heard even Mikey likes it.